Meeting Donald Trump left a lasting impression. This episode occurred during a period of personal uncertainty. Trump, not bothering to remember names, confidently asserted his ability to sit alongside wealthy individuals. This moment sparked an internal promise never to become like that. Mark Cuban, known for his directness, doesn't limit himself to discussing successful projects. He also exposes ineffective business models. Criticism of Donald Trump's trade policies holds a special place in his rhetoric. Cuban considers the fascination with tariffs not just reckless, but a potentially dangerous move. Cuban views imposing tariffs based on personal animosities as a short-sighted and economically destructive decision, capable of harming American business. It's important to remember that tariffs are not a burden on foreign governments, but taxes that fall on the shoulders of American companies and consumers. Mark Cuban expresses concern about Donald Trump's economic policies, believing they are based either on a misunderstanding of basic principles or a disregard for American interests. The tariffs imposed by Trump, according to Cuban, will inevitably lead to one of two negative scenarios. Either consumers will face rising prices for goods, or businesses will be forced to close due to increased costs. But that's not all. Such a policy will inevitably provoke a response. States affected by American tariffs will not passively watch their economies suffer losses. They will introduce their own tariffs, which will significantly hinder American companies' exports. Cuban, speaking about Trump, doesn't mince words, even using the word insane. He explains his position as follows. Targeted tariffs against dumping are perfectly justified and even useful when it comes to protecting American manufacturers. However, the widespread introduction of tariffs of 10 to 20% is, in essence, an inflationary tax that burdens American consumers. But even more dangerous, Cuban believes, is the selective approach to tariffs. Threatening, for example, John Deere with a 200% tariff for relocating production, while setting a tariff of only 10 to 20% for China, is, according to Cuban, madness. Such a policy creates favorable conditions for Chinese competitors, allowing them to take business away from the American company. Assessing the actions of the Trump administration, Mark Cuban doesn't choose his words. In his opinion, what is happening borders on insanity. He is sure that, for the Cuban economy, this is not just a failed policy but outright sabotage. Cuban characterizes the Trump administration's approach as the worst kind of business thinking, where personal grievances become the determining factor in decision-making at the state level. According to Cuban, these actions are driven not by a desire to strengthen America, but by the president's inflated ego, and this is a risk the country cannot take. Cuban's criticism is not limited to individual political decisions. It touches on deeper issues, particularly honesty. Mark Cuban doesn't intend to remain silent when he sees wrong steps, and he considers Donald Trump's tariff policy to be nothing more than recklessness. Cuban is convinced that imposing tariffs on countries simply because of political disagreements is not a strategy, but a manifestation of impulsiveness, fraught with serious economic consequences. He emphasizes that these tariffs are not targeted or strategic, but are ill-considered, reactionary measures that ignore the real mechanisms of global trade. The introduction of tariffs, in essence, is equivalent to imposing taxes on imported products, and these costs do not disappear into thin air. They are inevitably passed on to American businesses and, ultimately, reflected in consumers' wallets. This leads to widespread price increases, affecting a wide range of goods, from cars and electronics to food products that Americans eat every day. Mark Cuban, a well-known entrepreneur and investor, rightly notes that such a policy could be a disaster for small businesses, whose competitiveness directly depends on the availability of imported goods. He emphasizes that tariffs not only hit foreign manufacturers, but also strike a significant blow to American companies deeply integrated into global supply chains. The idea of taxing almost everything, especially based on personal animosity towards the country of origin of the goods, seems, according to experts, short-sighted and even absurd. In essence, this is a disguised sales tax which many economists warn about. And it's not just about a direct tax on the imported product, but also about additional costs for companies associated with administrative red tape, filling out customs declarations, and the need to hire brokers to keep records. All these factors, especially for small companies, turn not just into a tariff on purchased products, but also into an additional tax burden falling on the shoulders of businesses, regardless of their size. And retribution is inevitable. Countries that have felt the burden of American tariffs will not stand idly by. In response, they will erect their own tariff barriers to American exports. This threatens that farmers, industrial enterprises, and entire industries, whose well-being directly depends on foreign sales, will suddenly face closed doors in key markets. According to Cuban, such trade battles rarely lead to positive results, and history convincingly confirms this, demonstrating their tendency to backfire. Paradoxically, tariffs designed to protect American industry, according to Cuban, actually do it a disservice. By making it more expensive to do business, they stifle economic growth, lead to job losses, and ultimately weaken the country's position. For him, this is not just a misguided policy, but a complete misunderstanding of the fundamental principles of how the economy functions. However, Trump continues to stubbornly stick to his line, convinced that economic war is the key to reviving America's greatness. Cuban strongly disagrees with this statement, and he is not alone in his opinion. Mark Cuban, who has made many profitable deals in his career, unequivocally states when mentioning Donald Trump's name, he is the most unscrupulous person he has ever had to deal with. Mark Cuban has repeatedly stated, based on personal experience, that Donald Trump demonstrates a complete lack of honesty. According to him, Trump is the most unethical and dishonest person he has ever had to deal with. But why is this so important? Many may argue that they don't care, accepting him as he is, considering him one of their own. However, character is crucial, especially when it comes to the presidency. No one can predict what challenges and problems the leader of the country will face. Past experience does not guarantee successful solutions to future problems. Therefore, it is crucial that the president has qualities such as empathy, a willingness to learn and understand, and ethics in making difficult decisions. Cuban wonders how anyone can support Donald Trump, given his shortcomings in character and ethics. After all, in a critical moment of decision-making, he will only listen to himself, which, as experience has already shown, can have negative consequences. Mark Cuban, a well-known entrepreneur and media mogul, shared his memories of interacting with Donald Trump, emphasizing that dishonesty was the leitmotif of their relationship. Cuban recalled dubious business maneuvers, broken promises, and outright deception. According to him, Trump was always more interested in manipulating circumstances for personal gain than in making fair deals. Unlike most businessmen who strive for long-term trust and reputation, Trump, according to Cuban, preferred short-term strategies in which he is the only winner and everyone else suffers losses. This is not just a personal grievance, but the basis for Cuban's attitude towards Trump as a leader. If a person is ready for dishonesty in business, Cuban wondered, why should we expect honesty from him in politics? He saw a direct connection between Trump's business deals and his political career, arguing that the same selfish and deceitful tactics are now used to run the country. Cuban recalled an occasion when Trump invited him to his office, which, according to him, was covered not with photographs of children, as is usually the case, but with numerous images of himself. This episode, according to Cuban, served as a vivid illustration of the narcissism and self-admiration that characterized Trump's approach to business and politics. The walls of his office seemed to breathe his own greatness. Everywhere you looked, you would see photographs capturing his triumphs and achievements. It seems that no corner was left untouched by his image. Mark Cuban did not mince words when it came to his criticism of Donald Trump, calling him nothing less than an unethical dealer whose empire, in his opinion, was built on a foundation of deception and empty hype, rather than real achievements. These words caused a storm of indignation and support. Trump's loyal supporters rejected Cuban, seeing him as just another billionaire consumed by envy, while Trump's critics pointed to his words as further evidence of systematic dishonesty. For Cuban, everything was crystal clear. Character is paramount, and, in his opinion, Trump's track record in both business and politics left no doubt about his lack of it. Cuban has also spoken openly about the stark differences between the immigration policies of Presidents Obama and Trump. Contrary to popular belief, he emphasized that the Obama administration deported more people than the Trump administration. Specifically, in 2012, the Obama administration deported approximately 410,000 individuals, a figure the Trump administration never surpassed in any single year of its tenure. Obama, as Cuban notes, adhered to strict legal frameworks in matters of deportation, focusing on those who posed a genuine threat to national or public safety. This approach ensured compliance with all legal norms and upheld the authority of the judicial system. In stark contrast, Cuban criticizes Trump's pronouncements, which often call for immediate deportation. In Cuban's view, Trump's rhetoric implies a willingness to use executive power to circumvent established legal procedures, enabling deportations without due process. Cuban warns that such an approach not only undermines the rule of law but also carries potential risks to social stability. Ignoring legal procedures could lead to a loss of public trust in government institutions and create a dangerous precedent where the executive branch can disregard legal norms. Cuban raises a rhetorical question, recalling a debate where Trump showed a reluctance to listen to anyone. If a politician is unwilling to listen to arguments even in public debates, how can one expect him to consider expert opinion when making critical decisions affecting the lives of millions? The lack of a clear plan and the willingness to disregard established procedures raise serious concerns about his approach to governance. In political circles, the question of how a vice president should act when their views diverge from the president's position, especially regarding constitutional duties, is frequently discussed. Imagine a situation where influential figures, including cabinet members, former presidents, and sitting senators, publicly urge against supporting certain actions by the head of state. In such circumstances, some experts argue that the vice president cannot ignore their oath to defend the Constitution, even if it means disagreeing with the president. Critics note that the issue of trust and ethics plays a key role here. If those around the president had confidence in his integrity and moral principles, he might be given the benefit of the doubt. However, when that confidence is lacking, it speaks volumes. Of particular concern, according to observers, is the unwillingness of some leaders to learn and grow. It is argued that there are individuals whose knowledge and understanding of the world do not increase but rather diminish over time, raising serious concerns about their ability to make informed decisions in complex situations. In analyzing the prospects of public policy and economic strategies, the question of balance between efficiency and compliance with legal norms often arises. Notably, during the Obama administration, when deportation decisions were made, the emphasis was on strict adherence to the law and due process. This approach contrasts with the position that some observers believe the Trump administration demonstrates, where expediency is prioritized, raising concerns about potential disregard for legal norms and, consequently, reduced public trust. Mark Cuban, a well-known entrepreneur and public figure, has repeatedly expressed concern about the potential risks associated with Donald Trump's policies, especially in the economic sphere and in matters concerning the assessment of personal qualities. Cuban is particularly concerned about the long-term consequences of the trade wars and tariffs initiated by the Trump administration. In his opinion, the widespread imposition of tariffs could lead to increased financial burdens for both American consumers and businesses. As an example, Cuban criticized Trump's statement about potentially imposing a 200% tariff on John Deere products if the company decided to move its production to Mexico. Cuban called such a measure insane, emphasizing that it could harm the iconic American company and increase costs for American consumers. This example illustrates concerns about the potential negative consequences of economic policies pursued without due consideration of long-term consequences and potential risks to the American economy. Critics warn that such a trade strategy is fraught with rising consumer prices and retaliatory economic measures from global powers. His new idée fixe is to impose a 60% tariff on every item coming from China. It is worth noting that this person demonstrates a remarkable misunderstanding of the principles of tariff policy, believing that the burden of these payments falls on China. His confidence that Mexico would finance the construction of the wall is still fresh in memory. In the 90s and early 2000s, there was a certain logic in his reasoning about trade, but now something seems to have changed. His current views on tariffs and trade policy have become a disjointed set of ideas. Mark Cuban emphasizes that even small companies will face serious difficulties due to the time and financial costs associated with complying with the requirements stipulated by these tariffs. Previously, Cuban expressed concern that universal tariffs, contrary to expectations, fuel inflation and provoke states to take economic countermeasures. This criticism is part of a broad discussion among business leaders and economic experts about how effective tariffs are as an economic policy tool. Many believe that measures designed to protect domestic producers lead to higher prices for consumers and provoke a response from trading partners, even leading to global trade wars. Cuban's concern is not limited to the economic sphere, but also touches on Donald Trump's leadership style. He shares the opinion of actor Robert De Niro, who compared Trump to a gangster operating outside the law. De Niro openly stated that Trump behaves like a gangster and acts accordingly. Cuban agrees with this point of view, warning that such an approach could damage democratic principles and the rule of law. In his position, he emphasizes that effective governance should be based on principles of ethics and deep respect for public institutions. Deviation from these fundamental principles, in his opinion, poses a serious threat to the stability of society. He firmly adheres to this point of view and expresses regret to those who may mistakenly believe otherwise. Drawing parallels between the Trump family and a gangster family, he argues that such a comparison has grounds. He explains that Trump's behavior resembles the actions of a gangster, since he, in his opinion, acts like a gangster. At the same time, he expresses doubt that representatives of the criminal world would want to have anything to do with Trump, since even in the criminal world there are concepts of honor and morality. He emphasizes that keeping one's word and treating people honestly are important in any field of activity. Mark Cuban expresses concern that Trump's policies represent an economic and ethical threat that could lead to long-term negative consequences for the U.S. economy and democratic principles. He considers Trump's political course reckless and destructive to the economy and democracy. From economic strategies to immigration policy, Cuban raises an important question about the consequences of hasty decisions made without considering the long-term perspective. His argument that short-term gains can turn into serious problems in the future deserves attention. Does the audience share this point of view? We invite you to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments. If the topics raised seemed important and interesting, you are invited to support the channel and follow new releases. More materials are available for viewing right now.